In the last video, we fixed the rear end of the bike with the Racetech GS3? I got dyslexia. Something like that, shock with the full remote reservoir. But now we need to focus on the front. So the quick recap is, yes, the suspension is way too soft, giving you a somewhat disconnected feel. This thing's literally set up for a small tie rider. Not a daddy man like me. A bit of tech that a lot of bikes employ with the front forks is that one fork is responsible for one thing and the other is responsible for something else, like a multi-split function thing. It's got some fancy name. Most of the time they're splitting up the dampening duties, compression on one side, rebound on the other. I said duty. And they've kind of done that here, but in a crappier way. Our right fork here has a spring in it and is responsible for no dampening. There's just a spring in here, a little bit of oil. So that means the other side over here obviously has to do the compression and the rebound dampening, and it has no spring in it. Yeah, this is a dumb idea. It's a bad way to do things. If you were to even put a heavier spring just on the one side, I can't imagine what that's doing to the wheel bearings over time. I mean, KTMs with a slightly off-center rear shock spring tend to wear out the bearings unevenly in the rear wheel. That's way more rigid than a set of forks are, so what do we do? Well, Racetech has an answer for that. See, normally you order springs, you get 2 springs, right? Well, they've just sent a single spring, and that's not because we only have a spring in one side. That's not what they're doing, no. This spring is designed to go in the dampening fork. In fact, they say to just leave the other spring in there. That spring is so weak that it's almost just like half of what you need anyway. They know that they just send you another spring to go in that side. I haven't heard of anyone yet running this kit on the 300L. They had a similar kit for the old 250L, and doing a quick bit of research, it was like the go-to fix. Everybody bought this kit. And to get the valving correct to match, we have a gold valve kit from Racetech. And when you combine that with that fork spring, we should have a really good setup. So I've got the bike on a jack stand, front wheel in the air. Now technically I don't need to remove this or this entire fork, but as you'll see, we are going to take this one off. And that'll make more sense here in a little bit. Now we're gonna loosen up the top bolts on the triple, not the lower ones to start with, only the top ones. While we have the upper triples loose, but the bottom ones are still tight, this is the time we want to crack the big nut on top of the fork here loose. So you need a giant 30 for that. And just do like that, just pop it loose. I'm starting with the left fork, the one that really all the work should be being done to. Like I said, we pulled both off for a reason I'll make clear to you in a moment here. First thing I'm gonna do is just give this thing a good cleaning. Use contact cleaner if you want, but I mean, there's still some rubber on here and other painted parts are coated, so WD-40 is a little nicer. You guys know I love my WD-40, right? Now what we wanna do is we wanna loosen this lid up. All right, we're gonna pull this up a little bit. Oh, it's a pretty Honda red. Look at that. But there, that's good enough for now. We'll put this cap temporarily back on. There's a 6mm Allen down here in the bottom. Most forks you have to do some sort of holding, like the dampener rod with some special tool. Apparently this one you can just pull it out, and I guess we're about to find out if that's true. Oh yeah, it was just stiff. See, everyone's always so scared, oh, it puts too much power. This one, yes. This one's dumb. You don't do delicate things with that one. Oh yeah. Look how much Loctite's on that. Look at that. Pull the cap back off again. Oh wow, look at that. This is a different design for myself personally. I've never really seen one like this where you just had a dampener separate of the fork like this. If you were just going to be doing the spring and the voweling, we've taken this apart as far as we want. And I guess I should explain what it is we're going to be doing next. These forks are gold, and there's nothing really gold on the motorcycle. We've got a pretty cool looking red, white, and blue thing going with a little bit of black here. But the gold forks just stand out to me, and I hate it. So we're gonna actually be sending the upper parts of the tubes off to WeCoat. WeCoat, we've used them in the past. They did all the rims on the FZ and the cages on there, that blue. They did some stuff on the XR. We're gonna actually Cerakote those. For that, then I need to pull them all the way apart. And this would actually be good then if you have like a higher mileage one of these and you want to go and do the fork seals, this is the process you would also do. So follow along anyway, maybe you're at that point. We need to turn our focus to dust seal. Now if you're real careful with it, do this without scratching up, you can you can go around here and kind of wedge this thing down with a small flathead. That's a good sign. It's not real muddy in there. There's a little bit of dirt. Sometimes you pull these back and there's a metal snap ring thing in here. Just want to be careful not to mar any of this up. I've thrown a little bit of tape around the ring and the dust seal down here just because I don't want them rattling around at this next part. We got to turn this entire fork into a slide hammer. So basically you're going to bring this thing all the way up and you see it's going to hit and kind of stop right there. Bam, we got it. I've taped down dust seal and the other seal just so they're not flopping around. But from here, if you wanted to actually rebuild this, you could simply pop off these bushings, basically pull all of this off, then get the new stuff and put it all back on. It's very simple. When putting the new fork seals on, I like to put some tightly stretched electrical tape around here, as well as right where this collar sits. There's some sharp lips in there. If you have to pass the fork seals over these lips, they can cut them. This, my outer fork tube here, which is gold, I can pack this one up, send it off. Let's start messing with the spring side. The only reason you need to take this one off, you're either rebuilding the forks or changing them to a new color. Especially if you got gloves on. You want to kind of take your hand and you can kind of work the lower tube on it like that. It's not like this is explosive spring force. It's just a little bit of spring force it's under. It might pop up a bit. There it goes, yeah. I'm not sure how much oil is going to be in here as there's no dampening. This oil is just in here to help make sure that it's just not metal on metal in there. I guess you can still pump it like there's a dampener. All right, that should do for now. Pull this cap here off. All right, there we go. We're just gonna go to removing the dust seal just like we did on the other one. Go talk quieter over there so they don't hear you as much. Sorry, it's my Discord over there with Matt. We're just leaving that spring in there. But so I've got my other seals down here taped up. If they were old, I'd replace them, but they're not old, they're all new. So that's fine, we're gonna leave that alone. And I've got this ready to be sent off and make cool things happen. While we wait on the forks to get coated, we can start to mess with our dampening rod here. Or dampening, I don't know. People say I say words wrong. We're gonna mess with our voweling, the gold voweling right here from Race Tech. When you get a kit like this from them, you'll get some information. You need to print this off. They give you like this code, you gotta plug it in, you get to access this one time to save it. This is gonna tell us how to build the shim stacks in there. This is gonna look like some wizardcraft. We'll take it step by step and you'll see it's not so bad. We're trying to control the rate, speed that the suspension can travel, and it's sort of relative to how fast it moves. It's what makes suspension and not some pogo sticks that we're riding around on. So this is like the big key part here. In order to get to all that stuff that's down inside here, let's start by disassembling this and we'll actually look at what's in there and it'll make a little more sense, I think, to you when you actually see what we're gonna see in here. We need to pull this whole guy out. In order to do that, the first thing we wanna do is we're gonna take our thumb here, we'll try to push it in just a little bit. There's a clip right here we need to remove. Take the screw that was in here and we screw this in. All right, that should be our compression. Scoot this whole rod up. That would be your rebound right there. So now we need to take this valve body stack thing apart here, which means you undo this screw here on the end. Now, ideally, you'd have some kind of probably aluminum jaws that was the right shape of this hole, and you'd clamp it in here and undo this. I don't have one of those, and I don't want to just clamp this in here. From what I've already seen when I took this bottom bolt out, they put a silly amount of red Loctite in here. So here's what we're gonna do. Allen wrench in our vise, secure that down, and we'll put this right there, and we'll He-Man it off. No, we can't. I wish. I'll hit it with the heat gun for a few minutes. The top of this is threaded, so we got to get a bolt that'll fit that, and a couple nuts. So thread these nuts all the way down this bolt. I'm going to thread this into here. All right, there's where it bottoms out. So I'm going to come up off of that just a little bit. So we're going to bring this guy down, tighten this, and we'll tighten up this bottom one at the same time here. Nice and snug on there. Jam this nut down onto here. So this is fairly tight onto this. And we're going to take this top nut and unscrew it. And we want to be careful with this. This is the whole valve stack right here, so we don't want to let this like fall over. So I can hold my hand on there. And we've got that. Should loosen that screw there. Then this whole thing should just come out because we didn't bottom it out. It should be very easy. We're free. That's still pretty hot. Pull all this stack apart. Try to keep everything in an order it came in. So that's what we had. Some of this stuff we will reuse. But a lot of it we'll be replacing. Got the instructions pulled up here from Race Tech. So things we know that we're going to be reusing, be those guys to start with, and take this bolt, push that guy off. I need a sleeve washer. There's this gold in the picture, but we didn't get the fancy gold one, I guess, but that goes on next. Like that. new check spring, and that goes on next. Check plate, it's a small washer. There's a pack of these shims right here. We're not digging into those yet. This is out of the other little pack. That would then go onto here. Fits very nicely over the collar right there. Next, we are actually gonna be putting the gold valve itself on. Here it is, it's gold. Now, one thing you do need to stop and look at right here is if this has the bleed holes in it, which are required. This would be something that'll be on your sheet here, and it does talk about the compression one. We need one 1.3 millimeter drilled hole. Now, it says they may be pre-drilled, and I didn't think they were at first. I actually went and bought some very tiny drill bits. Stupid me, I took a better look at it, and it is pre-drilled. So I have it, but if you don't have that, I'd get you a very small 1.3 millimeter hole. I had to special order some little drill bits. We can also go ahead and stick the O-ring on here. And which way you flip this is important. You can't just have it one the wrong way. There's a small recess right here, which will slot into this guy right here. The next stack is our low speed stack, crossover, and high speed stack. Okay, all these next three things, they all have to do with this. So now we need to build this valve stack right here. Remember, we're on the compression. It says 2-stage. And remember how we're looking at the instructions, it said like low speed stack, crossover, high speed stack. That's all of this right here. You don't need to like actually look at these and figure out what's what. You have these packs on here of little sort of shim valve things. These are really little. These are actually gonna like fold over, and they kind of act like one-way valves and let fluid pass and not really pass in the other direction. They're not individually labeled or anything. You just kind of get these packs of them, and you actually have to measure them your own self. There's a 7 here. That means 7 of these washers. If there's no number, it just means 1. And the first number, this is all in millimeters. So this is like 0.15 by 17 millimeters. For instance, the first one in here we have 7 of. Now I've already gotten 6 of them ready. I believe this is the final 7th one right here. I'll show you though how we check this. So first of all, let's just make sure it's the right width. You can see that there we're basically at 17 wide. We're looking for a 0.15. We're probably not going to see exactly 0.15, but there you go, 0.16. So there you go. That's our 7th one of those, and we'll put those on the stack. These go in order, going basically from the valve up. And from here, we're just going to keep on going down the list. The next one I need is a 10 by 11 and a 17, blah blah, and so on and so on and so on until we get to the end. 0.15 by 11. We've got all the valves on there now, all this stacking. I'm gonna kind of wiggle this little plate down here. There you go, I got the whole thing to press down. Yeah, you gotta make sure you've got it all slotted in here at the end. That part should be free. You need to add this base plates in here. They do tell you to use some Loctite. You do not want to just glob a bunch of Loctite on this so that it gets down into the valves. That would be bad. As you're screwing it down, you want to make sure your lower washer and all that's in the correct spot. And according to the directions, we need to torque this to 25 inch-pounds. I actually went and picked up a small little torque wrench just for doing this job, so I do it the right way. And this thing starts at 50 inch-pounds. So, okay, well, you know, I tried. Click, click. What am I gonna do? And there we are, left with this. And it looks just like the picture. So if it looks like the picture, we're good. This is still free floating, which it is. It's really not that hard. It's mainly just literally putting very small washers together in the right order. Compression's done. Now we can move on to the rebound. So we have the rebound dampener here. This is a 10 millimeter. You can kind of lock onto this shaft right here. Now, a lot of times they like kind of ping over the ends of these threads on this nut. They don't look too bad, and they give you a new nut, so I'm not gonna really worry about it. We're just gonna try to see if we can zip it off. Wiggle this the rest of the way off. All right, just like the other one, I'm gonna put it out in order the way it came out, M6 by 1. So yeah, I'm just gonna try to clean these threads up here a little bit. Careful, we can start that on there. And you're just gonna kind of work this down on, kind of slow back and forth, take the burrs off. Oh, it's easy to move, okay. So we should be good to put the new nut on. Like I said, they provide you with a new nut, which is a locking nut, I believe, and they want you to put Loctite on it, so we won't have to re-ping that over. Same thing we just did, except instead of the bolt being like off the bike, this is the bolt, right? So just like before, we'll start with that little collar there, this washer. Now you see the other gold valve does look a bit different. You see there's a recess on one side and not on the other. That recess fits into there. But we also need to then add on, before we put that, this little washer which will sit over it, just like we did on the other side. It's not one that's in the normal shim stack, that's just the other side there. Yep, that should be free floating. Go like that. The sleeve washer, check spring, the check plate, the gold valve itself, we do have it positioned the correct way. And then the next thing is our stacks. Over to the other side of our chart, which says rebound, 2-stage rebound. So just like before, I'm gonna build this stack like I did the other one. Make sure that's free. Click, click. The little spring up here is free. These have been tightened down to proper specifications. And most importantly, it looks like the picture. Take that, we're gonna slide the guy back in. There's enough residual oil in there. I'm not worried about trying to oil it or anything. Take our other guy and we're gonna put the little clip back in. Put our screw back in and we'll pop that against there. And we are gold valved. All that work, you can't even see it. Why even make them gold? Can make them any color. All right, it's been about a week and look what we got. So I set this down to recoat it. I threw this CRF on there. The CRF should be really good. It's not thick like powder coat, which wouldn't be good for trying to get these up in the clamps. It should be stronger than that anodizing was. And of course, even better, it just looks so much better. I love this look. This is great. Repair and customize. Yeah, they do a lot of repair stuff too. In the Houston area and you need some repairs or some cool coatings, hit them up. Or even if you're not, just mail them stuff because they do a really good job. That's what I'm doing. I mean, believe there's local people around me that could do this, but I prefer to send it to that guy because I trust him more. I mean, do I want to send this fork tube to some random local guy so we Cerakote it, and is he going to actually protect the inside of this properly when he's media blasting it and hitting it with a powder? Doubt it. I prefer a dude that I know rides and knows what he's doing with this stuff. I also sent to him my brake lever. My brake lever, I actually kind of like that brake lever, but I couldn't stand it looking like the stock brake lever, so I went ahead and sent that as well, and I think it looks much better now. Also sent him the exhaust heat shield. Depending on which exhaust we end up getting, there's a good chance though I'm going to reuse that heat shield. God, it was just such an ugly color in my opinion. I mean, not ugly, it's just making it match the motor looked cheesy to me. So now it doesn't match the motor. It looks like that. Time to rebuild these things. I'm going to start with the spring side, the one that factory has a spring in it, because I think that's simpler. We'll rebuild that one and then we'll move on to the other one, which has our dampening rod and the new spring going in and all the cool stuff. Everything's very cleaned and wiped down. So best idea to go and throw some gloves on. Turn your head and cough. We'll just very carefully, just don't want to scratch the inside of this up. So we'll go nice and slow. It should go right over this one. Yeah, it's going to be a little firm, but not bad. There we go. You want to spin this down until it stops. Just keep that there and we'll bring this jam nut up into it. And for now, we'll go ahead and just push this all the way up and we'll screw this on. We're going to unscrew it here in a minute. We've got to fill this with oil. That's where we fill it from. But just so we can drive the seals in, we'll put that on. We've got a couple things we need to drive down. This bushing will need to be kind of driven in. We have our actual seal. We're going to need to use a driver to do that. We'll push this bushing down and we'll bring this other washer down on top of it. We'll kind of use that washer to beat it in. There's different ways people have homegrown done this with tape and PVC pipe. I just bought one of the tools a few years ago. This is the driving part. These two pieces come together and you slam it down. I like to put some tape over it just to keep me from scratching. I mean, they have a rubber plastic like insert in there, but it's not gonna hurt. And you have this guy right here. This is all nice hard plasticky rubbers. So we'll pop that around the forks, bring that down, and then we'll start driving. You wanna listen for the audible sound. There we go, that's down now. All right, now we'll just do the same thing. Whoop, bring that down, kind of press it into place, get the driver in place. I'm kind of spinning it because I mean, this thing hits on 3 sides at once, but still not the worst idea to move it. And there's that, if you remember there was a clip that held this in. So what I'm looking for is that we get this down enough that I can see the recesses of that clip. I can see the ring. See the recess for the ring is right here. Bring our other clip back down. A lot of times you can just put this in by hand. Just want to kind of squeeze it in there. That's in place. I'm gonna wipe everything off real good and then we can just push our dust seal down. Dead blow on a dead blow. Oh yeah, that's getting on. Wiping the tube down now with some alcohol, trying to get all any other marks and stuff we had on there. I did leave off this little ring right here. It goes in this groove. This is for the fork guard to kind of slide against, and it's because I'm gonna be putting some seal savers on. We'll talk about those in a bit, but you don't need those if you're running seal savers. Now we need to fill this fork with oil. We need some 5-weight, so we got that. 600 cc's in the spring only right leg. Sometimes you'll see like a height measurement. You set the oil level is a height inside there. Here they're only telling us basically a measurement like that. They just want us to fill this thing up. You need to really make sure you've gotten a lot of the oil out of these forks. Got a piece of cardboard at the bottom of the fork is sitting on, so we're not just putting it on the garage floor. Should drop, yeah, like that. I'm gonna slow down, let that work. It's all the way up at the top right here. All right, now I just need to do quick another 100 on here. Dab a little oil on my finger and I'll run it around that O-ring. Kind of snug it as much as you can. I mean, you can only turn it so much before it just twists it in your hand. We'll fully tighten that when it's up on the bike. Yep, there's no dampening in there. It's literally just a spring, but that's what these are. Now we're on to the dampening, whatever that word is, fork. We need to go ahead and just assemble the tube, put the outer tube back on. And that's gonna be the same process as it was on the other one. A little oil on that. Super clean, kind of oily. Everything's gonna slip in real nice. Ready to put our dampening rod back in. Got the bolt with a new crush washer. So I just gonna need to feed this in there. Put a very small amount of red Loctite on this. Again, I don't think it needs more than a very little bit. Stand it up while I do this. I use the pick tool to sort of slot it in there. It should be in it now. Yeah, it kind of has a little hole in there it sort of slots into. Oh yeah, that's gonna be good. Just like the other side, we're ready to start dumping our oil in now. Leaned it over to get the residuals out. What we need to do is actually cycle the dampening rod up and down. You'll feel, it should be a workout to do the whole way up and down. If you have air bubbles in there, you'll sort of feel like it moves fast and easy. Yeah, this is nice. We're gonna get demonetized. Because we're going to be adding our spring kit, it's time to add all those components. In the kit, we have 4 washers. We just need one of these. The other ones are for extra preload. They don't go on the bottom though. They go in the, I'll show you where those go if you need to add them, but we don't need to add any of those. I actually just got off the phone with Racetech. I had to confirm this with them. This spacer has been cut for the preload that we need. We're gonna drop this down in there, trying to let it splash. Drop this spring on. This is, all right, this dampening rod's just gonna have to go down with it. It's fine, I can get it back up. Got our little spacer tube. The holes need to go up on the bottom though. There is another little sort of collar washer thing that kind of clips into it. And that needs to go on next. I have to drop this dampening tube. I don't know how you're supposed to hang onto this dampening tube and not let it fall down in there while you're doing this. I'm getting a little bit of safety wire here. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make a thing. There it is. That was cute. If you need to add more preload, it actually goes between the spacer and the spring. That's where you would add these other 3. So now we have this sort of metal collar piece that's gonna go on here. So I need to actually remove this nut now on top that I've left up here. They're saying to basically stick a pick tool or something in here. Something you gotta stick in here, you gotta try to use this to keep it from falling. All right, that'll work. I'm just putting a little bit of side pressure with a screwdriver through it, and that keeps this from falling. That seems to work. I'm gonna put that little metal piece on. Now I can put the nut back on, and I can pull that out. The safety wire was a good trick. That was a good way to make that happen. A minute amount of Loctite on here. And just like the other one, we'll screw this down until it stops right there. And there's some kind of, I think they said like 14 foot-pounds on this. Like again, I don't know, feels about right. And just like that one, we'll snug that up the rest of the way once it's on the bike. Obviously all covered in oil right here, but oh yeah, it's got spring tension. It's got better dampening. Yee! Before I slip my forks back up onto the bike, I'm going to install these. These are called seal savers. Like a neoprene sort of sock for the lower part of your fork, which helps protect the seals a little bit better, keeps dirt and stuff off of them. See, it's just a big old piece of like neoprene. And it'll sit down here on this part of the fork, protecting the chrome tube in here because we don't want any pits or anything hitting this. I know there's some fork guards on there, but they're not exactly perfect. Things can still get to them, especially when we have the Supermoto trim set up. I mean, we've already seen where we've pushed dirt up into the forks, to the fork seals, just because of the way the relation to the tire and the lower part of the fork is. But even if you're not running Supermoto trim, these are just a nice bit of extra insurance to have. I know there's a lot of strong opinions about these. I always hear people say, oh, those don't work, and they just hold water against your seals. They definitely do work. Take it from me, I've been running these on my bikes for like 15 years or something. They definitely keep junk off of them. As far as holding water against your seals, I mean, yeah, some moisture will get through this, but if that's a problem, if water sitting against your fork seals is a problem, then what's the oil doing on the other side? But if you're gonna get these, I say get the kind that are solid. Don't get the zip up or Velcro ones, get the real ones. Yeah, they're kind of snug. They're not. Once you get a little bit of meat on them, they usually start going on a little faster. You see, it just sort of scrunches up. It doesn't affect the operation of the fork. We're only going to be tightening the bottom clamps right now. Obviously, we want to be very gentle slipping these in. The other thing you want to pay attention to when you pull these off is where they were sitting in the top of the fork. Sometimes there's a little bit of gap in there. They've been sort of dropped a little bit. These were just sitting flush with the top. That looks good. So we're just going to do the bottom ones. Make sure I got those gaps looking the same. Yep, those are good. I can snug down these top caps. They don't need much. Yeah, that's all it needs, just a little, and they're good. Now tighten them up. Let's finish up our seal savers then. Make sure we're all happy how that's sitting. They give you some gnarly zip ties here. Cut off the extra. No dangerous pokey edges. Do the same on the other. Let's put some fresh grease on your axle. Grease it up so you can take it out easier later. Dude, it looks so serious with that front end done up like that. That is so good. We got a, was it the Carolina Squad or whatever, called Whistle and Diesel. Give me 1 second. That is wild looking. So all the suspension components are now done, installed. It looks super good. There is one thing that we do need to turn back to, and that has to deal with the rear shock. There's some settings and some adjustments that we can do on that shock. Low speed compression, a high speed compression, and a rebound adjuster. And they've given me some measurements on here. 3 out, 25 clicks out. It has to do with these guys right here. Like this is the low speed, this is the high speed. And I've already checked these. They're both sitting at 3 turns out as they're supposed to be. The rebound is 25 clicks out. I checked that before I put it in just because it was easier to get to it. You can actually reach your hand there. It's a toolless operation. You can just turn it. They should have them ballparked within a good range for you. And there's one other thing on here which has to do with sag. Sag is how much the rear end sags when you sit on it. And this has to do with the preload. That's the big adjuster on the spring that compresses it or loosens it up. And we need to make sure that's set correctly. Rear wheel's off the ground, and I'll show you, we're gonna measure this, and then we're gonna sit on it and kind of bounce it and stuff and make sure it's all settled. And I'll sit on it and I'll measure again, and we'll see how much this thing squats out. When we're sitting on the bike by ourselves, it can be kind of goofy. So let me show you what I've rigged up here. On the axle, I've got a piece of twine. Then on the top of the fender up here, I put a piece of tape. We'll measure it right in the middle there, which is, oh my God, that is huge. I'm gonna squat on it. It's all right. I got it. All right. All right, here's the numbers we came up with. 627 millimeters, 539 loaded. It gives me 88 millimeters of sag. They want it to be 91, but there's a plus and minus of 5, so we're within the range. Does feel a little bit on the stiff side right now. I was tempted to maybe back it off a little bit, but it's literally like just put together. So I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is rock it like that, at least for the first ride, and then we'll see if it settles more or how we feel, you know, we'll sort of feel that out. Well, it's definitely tall. I was just sitting on it. That is a tall bike right now. We need to really go put this thing through its paces, through its testing. So I've got it in dual sport trim. We'll go run it around the local trails around here if we can. It's been sort of rainy and muddy, so I don't know how well that's gonna work. If we can't get a good test of it like that, fine, because the next thing I plan to do is to put the enduro tires on and actually go out to the Red River Off-Road Park, and that'll be a very proper test if we don't get a good one before then. I think it's good. Let's go take it for a ride, see how the suspension settles. There's a version of this video that came out over a week ago on Patreon. It's ad-free, censor-free, and you can join it for only $1 a month. There's an exclusive Discord. The next video is already out on there. That's what determines when these videos come out, is when does Patreon get their video. Patreon gets their video, you get the last video. You know, watered down version. Sorry, we have to do it. It's YouTube. We don't have a choice. Even when they don't give you the yellow $sign, there's a lot of games they're playing over here. So big thanks to Racetech. This is the biggest issue with this bike, is the suspension. So at least sitting here in the garage, it feels good. But let's get it out there next video. Let's see how it does. Lob this thing off some walls or something, you know. See how she lands. All right.